Hey everybody! So this is kind of like a trial process. I'm here in my closet because it's the most soundproof room in the house. Hopefully my audio sounds pretty good. So this is, like I said, kind of like a trial run of like putting my face on my videos instead of just doing voiceover. I'm recording from my laptop, so I might not do that every time. I might just use my DSLR, but this is pretty easy because I can actually see the video and see how everything looks. So we'll see how it goes. So today we're going to be talking about our huge yard overhaul we did, and I mean the entire yard. So when we bought the house, we immediately started renovating, and the grass died because of it. We weren't watering it because we weren't here for 3 months, and we didn't want to waste the money watering, and plus there's guys walking all over the yard, tools, tile cutter saws and cutters and wood and just trash and just all this crap. So it didn't really make sense to kind of baby the yard if it was going through this process. And like I said, we weren't even living here yet. And so the whole yard died is what happened. And so we moved in, we had this big brown front yard that was super thick. The previous owners really took care of it. And so it was super thick grass, and it was really nice, but we killed it. But it kind of worked out because apparently we live in an area where it's some of the most expensive water in the state, which is really crazy. Some of our neighbors, when they first moved in, had over $1,000 water bills, and so we were like, great, wish we would have known that before we moved in. I don't think it would have prevented us, but then now I'm doubly glad we didn't water our yard for those 3 months we weren't even here, because oh my god, because it was during the summer too. So ugh. Anyway, so it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So anyway, yard's dead. What are we gonna do? I've always loved xeriscaping, especially in southern states. We're in Texas, and we get some rain, but not really a lot. And so maintaining grass and lush vegetation and all this, it's I don't think it's really fair to do, and it's very expensive on top of it. And so I really love the idea of having desert plants like cacti, yuccas. I mean, there's a whole host of plants, not just desert type plants, that are drought tolerant and do well and just do well in Texas. For instance, I think we're in zone 8 for reference. And so I really like that idea. And then since all the grass was dead, we were like, well, why don't we just cover it with rocks? Even more xeriscaping. And so no watering and no mowing, which is also awesome because our front yard gets full sun all the time, and so it really sucks to mow in, let's say, July, when even at 7 a.m. it's 90 degrees. So to kind of circumvent all that, we decided to just rock the whole thing ourselves. And so we started I'm not going to say small, but we divvied up the yard into sections, and calculated the area for each of those sections to decide how much rock we would need for each area. And so what I did was I just kind of drew out the yard very roughly, and then section it off in rectangles and squares because those are easier to find the area of. And then the landscape supply company we use has the equations on the website that you can use to find out how many total either tons or yards of rock you need, and that's just what the company we chose how they do it. I'm sure it's pretty the same everywhere. And so I drew it all out and kind of sectioned it off and took my tape measure and measured out all those sections, length times width. And then I think you do times depth and some other number, and then you find out the yards is what it is, because I measured feet. And so we settled on first, what we did was we had to dethatch the yard, and that's ripping up the thick old dead grass is what that is, to make it flatter, because that stuff was super thick on there. And so we just got a metal rake is what we got. There are dethatching rakes and tools and all kinds of stuff you can get for that, but we just use a normal metal iron rake not those flimsy metal ones, like that are like aluminum or something. And just like went and raked and pulled up all the dead stuff, as much as we could anyway, just like make it flatter. Did all that. We laid down, after that was landscape fabric. So we put down a ton of landscape fabric so you don't get weeds. You don't want weeds coming up through your mulch or your rocks, because that's a huge pain to try to get those out of there, and they'll spread like wildfire, of course. Of course, weeds always grow, grass doesn't. And so we landscape fabric pretty much the whole yard, and then we put down, we made these two big like garden beds on either side, so we would so we could have plants, and then also it saves on rocks, because mulch is a lot cheaper than rocks are. And so we put down these two big garden beds, one on either side. We have like a sidewalk that goes up to our front door, so on either side of the yard we put down all this mulch. And then we just found plants. Our local like Discovery Center does like a semi-annual plant sale with like really inexpensive plants that are donated to them from around like the Metroplex and stuff. So that's super cool. You can find plants for like $2, $5, you know, pop those bad boys in. And so that was a lot of fun. I really like plants. And then of course just like going to Lowe's, their plants and stuff too. And so we planted all in those garden beds, and then like I said, for the rocks, I divvied up the yard into sections to figure out the math. And we didn't want just like all solid one color, so we first started with what's called Texas black gravel is what it's called, and it's very standard stuff. You see it all the time in photos. What we did was we got these big 2-foot by 2-foot pavers and made a pathway from that sidewalk I said around to one of our gates into our backyard, and then kind of around that section is where all this black rock went. And so we ordered that, and we had a what's called a transfer shovel, which is a shovel but instead of coming to a point it's square, and a wheelbarrow, and that was pretty much it. And so you wheelbarrow up the rock, move it over, dump it out, spread it around with that, and we spread it around with that metal rake as well, and my hands. And that's essentially it. And so we put down sand for the pavers on top of the landscape fabric. We put sand down, tamped it down with a tamper, put the pavers on top of their sand plots, and then put the rock between the pavers and on top of the landscape fabric. And so that was the process. It's super time consuming and like laborious, but it's very, very straightforward work, which I always appreciate. You know, there's no like digging and maybe like running into pipes or any underground stuff. We've got a sprinkler system out there that we can shut off now because it's all Xeriscaped, which is awesome. But there's no running into those pipes or anything like that. So I appreciate the process as a whole. Anyway, so we put black rock on either side, that same kind of system. And then when it was time to do the white rock, which is what we chose to do, the main part of the yard, there was quite a bit more math, because then we had to factor in those two garden beds we made, and they're like very oblong shaped. So there was a lot of like guesstimating with how big what their like area was, and to subtract that from the total. And so I tried my best, because they're really awkward shapes, but I just kind of like guesstimated. I measured and I kind of like guesstimated, like, you know, one sort of triangle shape, one sort of rectangle shape, and then like added a little bit extra on for like just in case. And then so we ordered that rock. We went with it's called Guadalupe River rock for us. It's just like kind of a white, there's some tans, very light browns when it gets rained on, but it's a very neutral rock. We didn't really want like super brown, which a lot of the rocks here in Texas are, like a lot of the landscaping rocks, because our house is like, we lime washed it kind of an off-white, and then like its accent color is black, and we'll eventually have wood accents like a post, and then like I'm gonna change our shutters to natural wood And so we wanted like kind of the yard to be also like sort of modern, even though it's like a very like traditional ranch style Texas house. It's not new, it was built in the 60s, you know. But we just kind of wanted to keep with that theme, and then like neither of us are really like, we don't like taupes and browns. Like the inside of our house is like gray, white, blacks, a lot of like heavy modern neutrals. In terms of like the grand scheme, you know, of all the theme we went with. Anyway, so we kind of want to reflect that on the outside, and so we want that Guadalupe rock. I added a little bit extra. It came, and then basically the same exact process. It was a little bit harder to spread because it was bigger rock. The gravel was much easier and much more forgiving, but it was pretty much the same exact process of shoveling it into the wheelbarrow, moving it around, dumping it out, spreading it. That was pretty much it. Once that came, the whole project took a couple of weeks, but we took like time off in between. We didn't do it all in one big go. But the Guadalupe rock took us 4 days from delivery to like finished. And I would work in the mornings on it, and like, you know, late morning into the late mornings and stuff, and then it would just get too hot. And then my husband would load wheelbarrows and dump them around the yard like in the evening after work, really, like at 7 or 8 at night. And then I would take those piles in the morning and move them around, and that's kind of how we tag teamed it. We also had to get a little bit of landscape edging for the front of our yard at the curb by the street, because our yard is like this tall off the curb, and so those rocks would just like come off. If we had pulled them that far, they would just run off into the street, and that's our money that's just rolling away. And so we got a little bit of edging and put that into the edge against the curb, and that is like a barrier against those rocks falling off. So that was really nice. And it was really, really easy to install, thank God. It's like, we were gonna go with metal edging, but it's like, we didn't really have a way to cut it, and so we would have had to buy that as well. And plus it's very expensive. Like 8 feet of that metal edging, like at Lowe's, is like $17-18. And we needed much more than 8 feet, and so we went with this like really heavy duty, I guess it's plastic, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's you can bend it easier than the metal stuff, obviously, and it comes in like big rolls, and so we only needed 3 of those rolls, and each one of those was like $20, I believe, and so it was $60 total, as opposed to like what would have been in like the hundreds with the metal stuff. Yeah, so saved quite a bit there, and it worked out perfectly, thank God. And we could cut it with like clip, like bush, like things you would use to like cut small like branches off small trees, or like bushes and stuff like those, like kind of like landscaping shears, but the handheld kind. And so that cut right through it, which was great. And so yeah, that's pretty much everything we did. I tried to go sort of fast to not bore you with all the details, because it's really pretty simple. It's dethatch your lawn, landscape fabric, and a ton of it, and do all of it, don't skimp on it. And then if you're doing a pathway, you want to have like sand so that the pavers can settle into it, and maybe some like really tiny gravel underneath. Some people do it like that, some don't. We just did the sand on top of the fabric, and put your pavers on top of there, make sure they're straight, and then rocks everywhere else there wasn't mulch or pavers or sidewalk. Like I said, it's really laborious and time consuming in that way, and if you do it during the summer, it really sucks. It limits your hours you can work out there. But other than that, it's like a really, really straightforward project. And if you do it yourself, you save a ton of money on labor costs. And so we only spent like it was expensive, but you spend like several $100s on rock and delivery, but then that's like it. Like, you're saving thousands in labor costs. So, you know, like I said, it's hard. I understand, like, people just paying someone to do it. That'll be next house is what I do. I don't ever plan on doing this again. But since this is like our first home, we like to put like a little like sweat equity into it just this one time. After this, we're done. And we're not going to be doing it to the backyard. That the grass all came back. There's beautiful trees back there. We're going to make it kind of more like lush and pretty and nice. And then the front is kind of like for the neighbors a little bit. And so we wanted to make it nice, especially, you know, because they've been looking at like a dead lawn for a year, and we have too. And they're very sweet. No one's ever said anything about it, but still. But it looks really nice. It came out really, really great, and we did it ourselves. And so that's like really cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoy, and if anybody has any questions, I will do my best to answer. I'm no expert by any means. This was definitely like a big experiment, and watching some YouTube videos, but really it's landscape fabric, rock, shovel, wheelbarrow. That's like kind of it, you know, and your muscles. Yeah, it's tough, but it looks really, really good. I like it anyway. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully this video like came across well. Again, like I'm just in my closet filming this, so I've got a flashlight as my lighting. Pretty kind of ghetto a little bit. But anyway, thanks again, and we'll see you guys soon.